Tonight on Closing Arguments. In Tallahassee, Florida, Donna Adelson has joined the ranks of convicted murderers. Among them, 2 hitmen, a shot girl, and her periodontist middle son, Charlie. They are all behind bars for their roles in the murder-for-hire plot of law professor Dan Markell. And on Monday morning, the Florida grandmother will be back in court for her official sentencing, where she faces a mandatory duration of life in prison. We have a preview. 10 years ago, a 6-year-old boy named Logan Tipton was stabbed to death in Versailles, Kentucky by an adult man named Ronald Exantis. Ronald was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the crime, and after serving less than half of that time, he was released on parole. Ronald then moved to Florida and started a new life in a home across the street from an elementary school. Now Ronald is back in police custody, and we have all the details on why. But first, on June 3rd, 2024, Bionca Ellis was captured on video engaging in strange behavior and dangerous behavior, wandering around a police station lobby and turning off the lights, shoplifting knives at a thrift store, then stalking a mom and her toddler in a grocery store while brandishing that knife. When the mom left the store to the parking lot, Ellis attacked the pair with a knife, killing the small child. She's on trial for murder, but has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Tonight, we take a look at the dueling experts from the defense and the state as this case nears its conclusion. Welcome to Closing Arguments. I'm Julia Janae, filling in for Vinnie Politan tonight. Thank you for being with us. And we begin this hour with this disturbing case that is about to be in the hands of the jury. It's happening in Ohio, and jurors are going to have to weigh in on a case that defines a parent's nightmare. This was a mother and son who were simply making a grocery store run together when the unthinkable happened. Out of nowhere, there was a woman who was wielding a knife, and she stabbed them both, killing 3-year-old child Julian. Witnesses are everywhere at this point. Police respond quickly, and almost immediately, Bionca Ellis is identified as a suspect and detained. And she's arrested without incident. She doesn't run, she doesn't resist. And amid the outrage over this senseless killing in a public place, what really fuels the outcry is the why. Why would she do this? Why were these two targeted? And then naturally, there's this question of, was she mentally ill at the time? We would learn, according to her attorneys, that there was a history, and they tried to get her found incompetent to stand trial. But after a few months, she was cleared to stand trial. But competent to stand trial doesn't mean sane. That's a legal term that's used. Not really as politically correct anymore, insane or sane, but it's still on the books when it comes to the law. And it doesn't mean not suffering from a mental disease when this happened. So jurors are faced with an unusual choice at deliberation time. They won't be deciding between guilty and not guilty of a crime. Ellis's team already admits that she did do this. But the question is now, was she legally insane, or did she appreciate the wrongfulness of what she did? And jurors, they aren't psychiatrists, they aren't therapists, but they today were given evidence from both sides to help them decide, what does justice look like for this little boy, Julian?
Tell us how you came to be involved in this case.
I was contacted by Attorney Mack, who suggested that he had a client that he believed was quite ill, who was housed in the county jail and involved in a very serious legal matter. When I interviewed her, I noted that she appeared incredibly mentally ill, and by that she was disorganized, illogical, not able to engage in appropriate exchange of information. I would ask a question and she would not respond in a way that was made good sense to me. The two main things that we look at in competency to stand trial are ability to understand the court system and ability to work with one's attorney. Despite the fact that her attorney was sitting directly across from her, She was not really able to share much information. She was very focused on expediting the court process, even though her attorney had told her that doing so would not allow them an adequate amount of time to prepare her defense. And eventually she shut down and wouldn't answer any more questions. It was my opinion with reasonable medical certainty that her diagnosis at the time, and she was experiencing active symptoms of schizophrenia. I asked if she had any history with the Wood family. She said she had never seen, talked to them, or met them prior to the events of June 3rd.
Did she provide any logical reason for harming them?
No.
And how did she describe her mental state entering the Volunteers of America thrift store and discussed about this picking up of the knife?
She said that she was afraid, that she had blanked out. She was trying to figure out how to, quote unquote, save herself.
What auditory hallucinations did Ms. Ellis report experiencing during the incident?
She said she had auditory hallucinations that suggested someone has to die, that they needed to be killed, that she could either kill them or kill yourself. You know what you came here to do, go ahead and do it.
You also offer an opinion with a reasonable medical certainty that at the time of the incident on June 3rd, 2024, Ms. Ellis' severe mental disease, namely schizophrenia, caused her to not know what she was doing was wrong. Is that correct?
Yes.
You indicate to this jury that you interviewed Bionca Ellis.
I did.
And did you videotape it?
I did.
Help me understand how you having voices telling you to kill yourself, the visions that you're dying, how that results in you stabbing the lady with yourself.
I lost control. I've never been in a situation where it was somebody life or death situation.
Based on a reasonable medical certainty, did you come to your final opinion in this case, sir?
I did.
And what was that opinion?
Well, for all the reasons we've gone over, it's my opinion that at the time of the act, Bionca Ellis had a severe mental disease of schizophrenia, but it did not cause her to not know the wrongfulness of the offenses.
There you have it. Two different doctors. The first one was for the defense, the second one for the state, both agreeing that this is a defendant who suffered from mental health issues, but not agreeing on whether or not she understood right from wrong in that moment of this incident. Let's bring in our think tank. We've got a great group for you to break down this case. I'm joined by former law enforcement officer and host of Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King is with us, and criminal defense attorney Josh Colesrud as well, and entertainment host Holland Reed. It's so good to see you all on this Friday evening. Thank you for joining us. Claudia, let's start with this. Today is actually International World Mental Health Day, so it seems appropriate that we are talking about this topic. And while our hearts break for this family of this little boy, this mother who was assaulted and her child killed in front of her, this jury is tasked with deciding a mental health issue. Did that first doctor, the defense doctor, did he move the needle for you at all? She, rather.
You know what, Julia? She didn't really move the needle for me. I really preferred or believed the testimony of the prosecution witness far more, because what I've seen in the videos supported his point more so than the defense.
All right, Josh, weigh in. What did you think about these two different psychiatrists who were on the stand? The state couldn't even get into the mental health issue until the defense brought it up in their case. So we saw this rebuttal witness on the stand, and they both agree she suffered from schizophrenia.
Yeah, thank you. I've actually tried a couple of these cases, and I can tell you firsthand that they're difficult. You know, the issue to the jury isn't about what happened, it's about why it happened. And it's always difficult to get into the mind of a defendant, and because how do we really know what was going through their thoughts? So the only thing that we can really turn to is circumstantial evidence. And here, let's talk about what the experts are agreeing on and what they're not agreeing on. Here you have the defense expert who was actually a student of the prosecution's expert, saying and relying on all of the defendant's statements that are not corroborated. So the state's expert is saying you can only take the defendant's self-serving statements at face value, and it doesn't have very much credibility with him. So when he was doing his analysis of what she knew or didn't know at the time of the murders, he's saying, well, I'm not taking into account what she said because it's not credible. Whereas the defense expert is saying, to me, it is credible. And so the jury is having to decide the battle of the experts, who is more credible among those two.
Yeah, we're anticipating closing arguments as soon as they get back underway next week. Colin Reed, this was one that just shocked everyone because of the horrific details. How difficult is it for a jury to overlook those details and make this balanced evaluation that we want them to about wrongfulness and whether someone appreciated the wrongfulness?
Julia, extremely difficult. I mean, first of all, it's the age of the child, the innocence of the situation, and then the horrendous crime that was committed. The thing, if I was a juror, the thing that sticks out to me is this idea that, yes, she had mental illness. That's clearly established. She had schizophrenia, but she said that she blacked out. She said that she either had to save herself or someone had to die. So that doesn't sound like you blacked out to me. It sounds like you made a decision in a state of a heightened state of your illness. And I don't know where along the lines, whether it was police or her mental health professionals or what have you, family members that failed this person or she failed herself. But it's going to be really hard to look at this and have that sympathy for her as some type of victim in her own circumstance here of her being a murderer. Schizophrenia does not make you a murderer. It's a part of a broad scope of mental illness that several people suffer from in the world.
Yeah, Claudia, we learned a lot more about this defendant today because of the history that you get through these doctors who talked to her, who looked at her records. And something that stood out to me is that several times during Dr. West's testimony, she talked about this defendant wanting to be arrested. We know she had this situation where she was at the police station before this all unfolded. They didn't give her enough of her things back, but that she had this desperation to be arrested. Even in her schizophrenic state, that she felt that she needed to be arrested and perhaps did something for that. What's your take on that? Have you seen that in your experience as a law enforcement officer?
I actually have, and for different reasons, but I once had to arrest somebody and take them to jail for stealing a candy bar. And the reason was because he flat out said, I'm going to keep doing more and more crimes until you take me to jail tonight. So in the effort to prevent something worse from happening, I went ahead and took him to jail. So sometimes there are reasons that people want to go to jail. Sometimes it's comfortable to them. They know they're going to be fed. Maybe that's where they have friends. There are a lot of reasons that they might want to go to jail, and this could be the case. I just think, as everyone has said, she's definitely suffering from schizophrenia, but I think she knew what she was doing and she knew what the outcome would be.
Josh, we're seeing that video of her in the police station. This is hours before this horrific incident where she's not giving this property that she says she needs in order to have something to stay. And what's the challenge when you're the defense attorney and you're having to argue this in front of a jury, where I think there's probably, for a crime like this, there's a feeling that incarceration is a more proper punishment than institutionalizing someone?
Sure. So when I look at that video, as a defense attorney, I actually like it. It shows delusion. Why is she doing this? It doesn't make sense. And it helps the defense argue that she was going through a psychotic, schizophrenic episode where she didn't appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions. Now, the difference between finding somebody guilty of murder without by reason of insanity and finding somebody guilty by reason of insanity is rehabilitation. So if she's found guilty by reason of insanity, the real purpose is to rehabilitate her. So that's what the jury is going to have to decide here. Is this woman, is she deserving of rehabilitation, or is it retribution?
And Josh, I want to follow up on that because we have a situation where she was deemed incompetent for some time to stand trial. She received medication and now she's competent to stand trial. Now, competent to stand trial doesn't mean that she wasn't legally insane at the time, but talk about the difference and why that still could be hard for jurors to digest.
Yeah, great question. So competency has to do with somebody's ability to understand what's going on right now. Does this person understand what the charges are? Do they understand what the penalty is? Now, insanity is looking in the past. So did she understand the wrongfulness of her actions in the past? And I've had experts explain it to me like this. If somebody is insane at the time that they committed, let's say in this case, a murder, they'll answer a question like this. What is your name? And they'll say something like, the sky is blue. Like they will have to literally be in a different universe. So when I see that she is following orders, she understands what the words mean and what she says, that tells me as somebody who's gone through this, that she wasn't insane to the degree that the defense is saying.
We did see a lot of reaction from her. All right, we have to get to a break. That's where we have to leave it. But closing arguments in that case are going to start on Tuesday because of the holiday on Monday. And then this jury is going to have the case and they're going to make the decision between guilty or not guilty for reasons of insanity. The think tank is staying with us. When we come back, we're going to weigh in on another case. This one about a child killer, convicted child killer, who was released on parole and now is back in police custody, having to do with where he lived after that. Plus, coming up in the next hour on VPI. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, an OnlyFans model charged with murdering her boyfriend. But Courtney Clenny says it was self-defense. What does her initial police review reveal?
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
A wife accused of murdering her prominent attorney husband, and the defense involves blaming her own sons?
Victim to verdict with Ted Rollins. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
This week, Wednesday night, we received information that he may have moved to Florida. And that was a concern to us and more specifically to Marion County. Our intelligence unit began immediately investigating this, looking into it, and learned that yes, in fact, he was living here. And after further check and looking into his case, we realized that he had failed to do one thing, and that was register here as a felon. In Florida, they have 48 hours to register as a felon, and he had failed to do that.
This is a case that's beginning to get a lot of attention. That was Lieutenant Paul Bloom who was speaking, the public information officer for the Marion County Sheriff's Office in Florida. And he's talking about this man that you see there, Ronald Exantis. He was convicted of killing a child, and he was released on parole after serving about half of his 20-year sentence. Now, he was arrested in Florida earlier this week after he failed to register as a felon within the 48 hours required by law. And more details about his arrest are coming out tonight. And to break it all down with us, we have here in studio, field reporter Cody Thomas is with us to explain this very strange set of circumstances. Bizarre. Yeah, but what's happening? Why did he get arrested?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head, Julie. It's a case that's garnering a lot of national attention as well, in accordance with Florida. But a national outcry, 10 years ago, when the convicted killer, Ronald Exantis, broke into a family's home in Versailles, Kentucky, and stabbed a sleeping 6-year-old multiple times in the head, killing him and injuring other family members of his. Now, that was in 2015, and in 2018, a jury found him guilty but mentally ill, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But just last week, he was released on good behavior after just 8 years. And then he moved down to Marion County, Florida, where he's now been rearrested for not registering as a felon. So let's take a look at the police body cam video of the moment that he was taken back into custody.
Bring him all the way back.
I don't know if I did it. Coming back.
Put your hands behind your back, Ronald.
Yes, sir.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Yes, sir. You have anything on you? No, sir.
Pretty tight. All right, man. You do have a warrant for your arrest out of Florida, okay? We'll talk about it in a minute. Yeah, I'll call it out.
The Marion County Police say they found out he was heading to Florida through confidential intel, and they believe he had family that lived in the home where he was staying, but there's more to that home's location.
More shocking and disturbing point of this was that he had set up residence immediately next to an elementary school. When I say immediately next to it, there's a fence between his house and the elementary school, and that was it.
In Julia, according to an affidavit, police discovered that Exantis was issued a Florida driver's license on October 3rd. His supervised parole began earlier this week on October 6th. The same day, he was advised that he was required to register as a convicted felon with Marion County within 48 hours.
He was told by the Department of Corrections, they're given a form. It's printed out in whatever language you speak, and he is given that and was told you have 48 hours to register at the Marion County Sheriff's Office. And we have felons that come here and register every single day of the week. So they know that, they're told this. He just willfully flaunted that. And I don't know why he chose to do that. Honestly, I don't know why he chose Florida. To come to Florida after doing something like that, you want to ask him, have you met Florida? Do you know us? Do you know our sheriff or our governor or, our attorney general here? Zero tolerance for that type of behavior, and you're not going to flaunt the law and fail to register here.
Now, I obtained a copy of that form that outlines clear offender instructions in terms of criminal registration, remaining drug-free, home verifications, and the restoration of voting rights in the state of Florida. Now, Lieutenant Bloom also spoke about the family of the 6-year-old victim, Logan Tipton, who was killed years ago. Take a listen to what he had to say and the Tipton family's response to Exantis being re-arrested.
For us, our hope is maybe we shoulder just a little bit of that burden that the Tipton family shoulders every single day in thinking of this. And I can't imagine the horror and the sadness that ripped through that family when they realized this man was being released early, a 20-year sentence, and he didn't even serve half of that just to be released. He was released, from my understanding, on good behavior. Well, I think the overwhelming evil behavior that he exhibited in killing this child and trying to kill others in the same home outweighs any good behavior he could do in the next 400 years.
Florida did a better job of anything than Kentucky did.
I think they were upset that he was even in their town.
With us now knowing that he's back behind bars right now, it takes a huge weight off of our shoulders.
He didn't just kill my son. He killed every member of my family. Every single one of us. And every person that's sitting here today is a completely different person.
And Julia, Logan's mother took to Facebook to make a statement of her own as well. And it says in part, "First time I've heard him say anything since his interrogation after killing Logan. He's a monster. He's not insane. He's definitely crazy. You would have to be crazy to do what he's done. Act like he's acted, played the game like he's played it, and now completely avoided doing something very, very important. They told him to go register within 2 days. He completely ignored them. I wonder why. Because he had no intention of ever going to check in. That's why. He was going to do something really bad again, or he was going to disappear." In Julia, we also have a statement from Kentucky Attorney General James Uthmeyer that was posted on X yesterday. He says, quote, "My office has been working with State Attorney Gladson's office in Marion County since we were alerted that this dangerous individual who murdered a child by repeatedly stabbing him in the head was in Florida. This afternoon, the Marion County Sheriff's Office and 5th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office obtained a warrant for the arrest of Ronald Exantis for failure to register as a convicted felon. State officials are now working to send him back to Kentucky." Now, Marion County Police say there isn't a current timeline on his extradition back to Kentucky, but he is now currently being held without bond until then, Julia.
Oh, that's a lot of information and shocking. The only offense between him and an elementary school. Cody Thomas, thank you for keeping us updated on what happened there. Let's bring back in the think tank and get their reaction to this bizarre story. Claudia King, Josh Colesroot, and Holland Reed with us. Holland, I want to start with you. Just react to what it's like for parents in Florida, there in Marion County, knowing that this happened.
Livid, unbelievably livid. If I've never ever agreed with alligator Alcatraz, I would throw him there. 20 years, and he only served half. That child didn't even get to see 8 years. This man is out in 8 years. He absolutely had a full intention of not reporting and following through on the accountability of what he did to this family and what he did to that child. He needs to stay in jail, go back to jail, and he doesn't need to see the son for as long as, if that was my child, I would have handled that myself, because there's absolutely no way that he should be out walking free.
Yeah, Claudia, it seems pretty strange when you hear 8 years for the murder of a child. It could be what we're seeing in the case we talked about before the break with Bionca Ellis, who's going to be determined whether or not she's not guilty by reason of insanity or not. This man found guilty but mentally ill, which is a unique for the system there in Kentucky. But talk about how this even happens.
You know, when I first heard about this case, that's exactly what I thought of, was the case that we just talked about with Bionca Ellis. And what if that happened with her? You know, I agree with what Holland said. I don't think he had intentions of reporting. And even if he was allowed to live near the school, it's just a really bad look to do so. So that shows that he still does not have good judgment. And something that I read indicated that he was only going to be under supervision for 1 year. So he killed this poor little boy, assaulted the entire family. He's out in less than half of his sentence and is only going to be supervised for a year. It just does not make sense to me at all.
Josh, it's hard to make sense of it. Bring the legal side to this. How do cases get dealt with when they are behind bars? I mean, even with good behavior, I think people are surprised that you can serve 8 years of a 20-year sentence.
Well, you're absolutely right. And let's look at the verdict. So he was found not guilty by insanity on the murder charge, but he was found guilty on a regular assault charge and then sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now, on that count, in Kentucky, there usually is a range of how long somebody will actually spend in prison. And here, he was released early, based in part on good behavior, and the parole board found that he was no longer a danger to the community. Now, the interesting thing is going to be whether or not this violation of his release conditions is going to lead to a charge in Kentucky for violating the conditions of his release. Because if he's charged with doing that, he can be sent right back to where he came from, which is prison.
So, Holland, that sounds like the system working, because that's why we have parole, we have probation, we have felons having to register. Are you encouraged by how swiftly it seems that this was taken care of?
Encouraged, but still extremely disappointed in the verdict and then the sentencing across the board. I mean, you have people that are sitting in prison for way less, as Claudia said earlier, you know, someone selling a candy bar or small amounts of marijuana, and their life is taken away from them. And this man took someone's life, and justice, I don't think, was served. But I am glad that Florida did what Florida does, and they made sure that he was taken into custody swiftly. I also want to just say that that sheriff, you know, just because he got out on good behavior, like he said, the behavior that put him there was just horrendous. It was horrendous, and I don't understand why he got off so easily.
Claudia, what do you think happens next? So Josh outlined it a bit, but if he's going to be taken back to Kentucky, so no longer in Florida because his case is there, the violation is there, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, part of me wishes that he would be staying in Florida because it seems like they are taking care of business. But it looks like they are trying to get him back to Kentucky, and ideally what Josh said is hopefully what will happen, or he violated his conditions of being released. Let's get him right back in prison where he belongs, and he can continue his good behavior behind bars for the rest of his sentence.
This is a strange one, but the outcome right now, a lot of people happy that this did not become someone who was living next to a elementary school for all of this time. We will continue to monitor that one. The think tank is staying with us because when we come back, we're going to break down this case that has been brewing since 2014. The sentencing of Donna Adelson is going to be happening on Monday. The court just put that on the docket. We have more about what will happen with the mastermind matriarch.
Who in Dan Markel's life would hate him enough to hire a professional killer.
They put her at the top of this pyramid behind Danny being killed.
Did you say my parents have more reason to dislike Danny than almost anyone else?
At that point, I was sitting with law enforcement for 6 hours and had just been told that Danny had been shot.
She called him a lot of bad names.
Yes.
She said ugly things about him.
Yes.
But not one single time did she ever suggest that Danny deserved to be harmed, did she?
Never.
She had said, you know, I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me.
Was that out of character for her to not be curious?
Yeah, I mean, it was an unsolved murder of my former brother-in-law.
She's the matriarch. She's the matriarch mastermind. They don't have evidence of that.
Did we have it right? Were you the middleman between the shooter and Charlie Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
He did tell you that his mother washed the money.
Yes, ma'am.
We took an undercover agent.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this.
And who is the first person that the defendant calls?
Charlie Adelson.
As it relates to your right to remain silent and your right to testify, what is your decision?
This time I don't want to testify.
The undercover approaches Donna and hands her a piece of paper. When Charlie asked Donna, does it involve me or other people? Well, probably both of us.
She called Danny a major. She called him a royal, a piece of. You call somebody some bad names and that means you wanted him dead?
Catherine McBanoa admits she was in a plot to kill Dan Markel, and she got 44 checks and they were all signed by this woman.
They cannot prove she had him killed. At the time that he was killed, she had paid anybody or asked anybody to do it.
We, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself.
That verdict came down in September, and all of us in the gallery watched as Donna looked stunned and couldn't hold back when she said, "It wasn't me. No, this is wrong." The judge had to reprimand her, and everyone had to be cleared out of that courtroom. It was dramatic. And her reaction didn't stop there. The Untold True Crime Files channel on YouTube, they were able to get their hands on video of Donna Adelson when she was being taken into police custody after the verdict. Take a look.
I know. 117 is in the control room. Don't pick it up inside slide, please.
Despondent, distraught, Donna Adelson was taken back to the Leon County Jail. And she's in the jail because she hasn't been sentenced yet. But she's going to be sentenced on Monday. This mother-in-law who went from a meddler to a murderer is going to know her final fate. Let's bring in the think tank to weigh in on what we can expect on Monday. We have Claudia King, Josh Colesrud, and Holland Reed with us. Josh, let me start with you. Do you think Donna Adelson is going to speak at her sentencing?
Well, if I'm her defense attorney, I'm going to tell her not to speak, or at least if she does speak, not to admit to guilt, because if she does do that, it can severely affect any appeal, which is definitely coming after a jury trial. So, you know, whether she speaks or not, I really hope that this day really is about the victim's family. You know, they've waited 11 years for this moment. This is the 5th person convicted for the murder of Mr. Merkel. And the only question really going forward is whether or not Wendy will be the next person that's charged.
Yeah, we're going to talk about who may be next and potentially what the appeal will be in just a moment. But Holland, I get this question a lot when people know her sentencing is coming up. They know the mandatory sentence is life without parole. And they ask me if I feel any sympathy or if people have any sympathy for her age. What are your thoughts on the fact that she's going to go to prison and she's well into her 70s?
I feel like this hour should be called a searching for accountability hour, because the age has nothing to do with it. It's going to be really hard to find sympathy with someone that went out of their way and structured this entire plot with all of these people to, again, not just meddle, but murder. So her age has nothing to do with it. You live by the sword, you die by the sword, or you're going to serve your time by whatever way that the jury, hopefully, I guess, does their due diligence and serves justice.
But Claudia, what do you think about her reaction? We saw a lot of a reaction from her when this was outside the presence of the jury, but she went back and forth and almost seemed waffling about whether or not she should testify. So though I do agree with Josh that I think her attorneys would tell her she shouldn't speak, she seemed to really struggle with whether she should talk, and she seems like someone who really wants to talk in the courtroom.
Well, I think she's very much like Charlie, and she believed that she could get on the stand and just really convince the jury that she didn't do it. I think she's delusional, because to see the surprise that she had when she was found guilty, we all saw it coming, so I'm not sure how she didn't see it coming. I think Josh is right. She definitely should not speak. If she does, I think it will be all about how she was wronged and this is terrible and everybody has done an injustice to her. She won't focus on the true victim at all.
And you mentioned Charlie, so I got to take this moment to show some body camera footage, because he was in Leon County for this trial, but he didn't get called to the stand. But while he was there, we have body camera footage of him reacting to someone who was coming to bring him medication.
Sorry.
Really stupid. You open the hatch. I'm standing here barefoot and you slam the door into their toe.
Can you 56 Foxtrot too?
Really stupid. Congratulations. Open the hatch. When someone's standing here barefoot, you open a door into their toe?
Excuse me.
That was really stupid. Bring your lieutenant over. I'll tell him how stupid you are.
Okay.
You don't know what stupid is? You're stupid.
He's on the way.
LC don't go. Yeah, sure. What you got? Medical comes to hand me my pills, so I stand at the door so I can get them through the hatch like I always do. She opens the door and pushes the door and runs it over my toe. Okay. So I said, you just my toe up. You hand medicine through the door every single time. I'm standing here barefoot. If you look at the tour, it's a big gap. If you're standing here barefoot, take a heavy door and slam it forward, you're gonna someone's toe up. It's common sense. That's all it is. Which toe? My right big toe. That's the step over the toe. I don't think it's broken. I just think it's fine. I just like my medicine to be full. But next time they should use the hatch in the door they use every single time. It's common sense. If someone's standing here barefoot in front of a door, you don't issue a shoes. I'm standing barefoot. You stand there barefoot, and I slam the door open.
Okay, so come with me. We're gonna take you down to these toes. You just look at him now.
They got an X-ray there?
No.
Where they can go with their toe.
Very indignant for a man who killed his brother-in-law. Josh Colesrud, Charlie had an appeal. Donna, we know, is going to file an appeal. And what some of the issues that she brought up in her motion for a new trial, which often mirrors an appeal, is that she had an issue with the jurors perhaps weighing in on information that they shouldn't have when they talked after the trial, didn't like how the judge treated her lawyers, and said that those jailhouse informants shouldn't have testified. What do you think her chances are?
I think that her chances are pretty slim. You know, typically the appellate courts are not going to disturb a jury's verdict unless there is really like a manifest injustice. That is, you know, something so significant that had the fact or situation gone the way that it was supposed to go, it would have changed the trial. So what that means is if the judge made an error, it has to be so significant that it would have changed the verdict. And I just don't see that this judge, who I thought did a great job, made any type of significant and material errors that would be considered so big that it would have changed the verdict.
Yeah, I think there were things that they brought up in that motion, but whether or not it's going to be successful, we will see. Holland, there's a lot of people asking about what comes next. Is Harvey going to be indicted? Is Wendy going to be indicted? And I got to tell you, being at not only Charlie's trial, but monitoring the other trials that have happened before that, and being there for Donna's trial, there was this feeling of finality. The way the prosecution talked about things afterward, I mean, there was more of a press conference. She came out and met the microphones versus how she was during Charlie's trial, where it was kind of like they had to grab her and get her attention. And we had both of Dan's parents giving a victim impact statement, where before they had just picked one family member. How's that going to feel like for you? You're a commentator on this story. You've followed it and seen it. If there are no more arrests in this case.
It doesn't really feel final to me, to be completely honest with you. It feels like this was much bigger than just these few characters in this story the entire time. It always felt a little off, like there's someone else that knows something else or a little bit more. So I know the rumor mill has been swirling about who may have had a motive, or Josh has mentioned that, Wendy having the motive, but I don't know. At the end of the day, it really doesn't quite feel final. I think someone's going to slip up because they are very audacious. They clearly don't like to lay low. They think that they can get away with anything, and it seems like someone's going to slip up and they might have to be brought to court.
Yeah, Claudia, what do you think based on the evidence? Do you think that they have enough to move forward with an indictment based on what we heard from these different trials, or are they waiting, like Holland said, for more evidence to be revealed?
I think in Donna's trial, we actually saw a lot more evidence on Wendy than we have in previous trials. So I believe that they do have enough evidence for Wendy to be found guilty. As far as Harvey, I think he insulated himself pretty well. They might be able to get him for after the fact, but I think he's the only one who did a good job in staying quiet through this whole thing.
Think Tank, thank you so much for your analysis this hour. Claudia King, Josh Colesford, and Holland Reed. That's all the time we have for. But when we come back, we're going to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Plus, here's what's coming up in the next hour on VPI. Tonight on VPI, OnlyFans model Courtney Clenny used to record herself for fans all over the internet, earning major cash along the way. Now the world is seeing Courtney on secret recordings made by the man she allegedly stabbed to death. What will the jury think of Courtney after seeing these videos?
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Convicted for the murder of her former son-in-law. How long will the matriarch mastermind spend in prison?
Was it worth it?
The sentencing of Donna Adelson. Live coverage Monday on Court TV.
Welcome back. We've reached the point in the show where we reveal something else you need to know. Let's put it up on the big screen. Today, Jose Soto Escalara, the man convicted in the first-degree murder and the death of his mistress, Tanya Wise, and their unborn child. She was 8.5 months pregnant. He sat before a judge in Florida and learned his sentence during the penalty phase of his trial. Now, the jury had already voted 8-4 in favor of the death penalty, but the judge had the final say and could have made it a life sentence. The judge was ultimately responsible, and let's watch the dramatic moment from court today.
Therefore, Jose Soto Escalara, I hereby sentence you to death for the first-degree murder of Tanya Wise. I also independently sentence you to death for the first-degree murder of her unborn child. I hereby order that you be taken by the Sheriff of St. Lucie County to Florida State Prison for close and secure confinement until the date of your execution, at such time as scheduled by the Governor of the State of Florida, at the place of execution named in his warrant of execution. You shall be put to death by the means provided by Florida law at that time, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Final word from the judge. No reaction there from the defendant who didn't want his wife to find out about his mistress. Before we end this hour, there is a picture that I want to show you. Take a look at Savannah Harmon. She's 16 years old, and she was last seen in Dayton, Ohio, back on October 2nd. If you have any information about where she is tonight, call the Dayton Police Department. That number is on your screen. You can also always call 911 or 1-800-THE-LOST. Let's see if we can get Savannah to a safe place tonight. That does it for closing arguments, but don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime coming up in the next hour on Vinnie Politan Investigates.